For decades, we have explored the stars not only in search of planets and signals, but also anomalies. These rare moments when something in space refuses to obey established rules. And now, the James Webb Space Telescope may have discovered just that. What began as a routine observation of the third interstellar object ever recorded in our solar system, 3 Atlas, turned into something much stranger, darker, and infinitely more significant. Because deep in the cold abyss beyond Mars, Webb detected something that should not exist. Not just light, but artificial light, a glow unlike any comet or asteroid, a signature that defies known laws of reflection or refraction. And now astronomers and astrophysicists face a question that chills them to the core. What is the Triad Atlas really? Stay with us as we delve into the data that has reignited the oldest and most haunting question of all time. Are we alone? The three-eyed Atlas was first spotted as a faint dot at the edge of the solar system, moving on a trajectory that no local object could replicate. It clearly had an interstellar origin, born beyond the gravitational field of our sun, cast through the galaxy by some unknown force, now silently drifting in our vicinity. At first, he was perceived as a cosmic curiosity, like his predecessors, Oumuamua and Borisov. But even in the earliest images, something seemed strange. Unlike most interstellar objects, the Three Eyes Atlas was unusually bright, and not in a way one would expect. Its magnitude did not match the expected size or composition. It shimmered with an abnormal consistency. Its brightness did not fade as anticipated, nor did it flare up with signs of gas or dust emission. Traditional comets usually shine and flare as their ice evaporates, but this object remained stable, as if it had an internal power source. Telescopes around the world turned their attention to it, and Webb, with his unparalleled ability to see in the infrared spectrum, was brought in to decipher this mystery. What he saw changed everything. The James Webb Space Telescope, located 1 million miles from Earth at a Lagrange point, was designed to see the invisible, piercing through the brightness of stars to reveal what is hidden in the shadows. Its gaze on the 3 moons of Atlas was meant to clarify the situation. Instead, he only exacerbated it. The telescope instruments recorded centralized thermal radiation that did not correspond to any natural reflection of sunlight. Usually, a comet shines due to sunlight reflecting off dust and ice, but the three-eyed Atlas showed an internal thermal signal, something emanating from its core outward. It was not scattered light, it was emitted light. The heat map revealed a pattern that did not match known curves of natural objects. It flickered weakly and irregularly, and most alarmingly, seemed to repeat cyclically at certain intervals. This rhythm, repeating with barely noticeable regularity, indicated not randomness but intent. Some scientists from NASA and the European Space Agency proposed exotic explanations: radioactive decay, subsurface friction, alien isotopes, but as new data came in, these theories began to collapse. The only consistent explanation that remained was that no one wanted to record it. This object could be a source of energy. As data from the James Webb and Hubble space telescopes and ground observatories began to accumulate, the profile of a 3-headed Atlas emerged, unlike any known celestial object. His trajectory was too precise to be chaotic, as if he himself chose his path, subtly correcting course through gravitational wells. Its rotation was unnaturally stable, with movement that contradicted standard inertial drift, and the absence of a comet tail even during close passes through solar radiation indicated a shell or casing, possibly something protecting it from heat. Then came the most controversial discovery. The albedo, or reflectivity of its surface, was measured as almost perfect in some parts, approaching polished metal rather than stone, ice, or dust. The implications of this finding shocked the astronomical community. This is a metallic, structured object emitting energy. We are no longer observing a natural object. We have become witnesses to technology. Suddenly, whispers began in the corridors about the term probe, a beacon, a device, even an artifact. The idea that this could be an alien spaceship was no longer confined to conspiracy theories. It began to quietly circulate in institutional letters behind encrypted walls. Perhaps the most merciless evidence was not the thermal emissions, nor the trajectory, nor the strange metallic signature, but the light. Photometric analysis revealed something eerie. The light emanating from the 3-eyed Atlas concentrated in a narrow spectral range. In other words, it was not a broad natural reflection of sunlight, but a controlled emission of specific wavelengths. This is how we work with LED arrays, laser communication systems, and spacecraft beacons. Moreover, this range included frequencies often used in communication and navigation systems on Earth. Not only that, but the intensity of the light seemed to respond, barely perceptibly, to solar radiation, as if some onboard system was adjusting it in real time. The light flickered not by chance, but with a strange intermittent pulse. Astronomers processed the data through known signal models. The results were uncertain, but not meaningless. Some claimed that the pulsations resembled binary sequences. Others said it could be a rotating energy source, but the conclusion was undeniable. It was not a passive object, it was doing something intentional, and we were witnessing it in real time. As the data continued to flow in, a team of astrophysicists from MIT and Harvard conducted a deep analysis of the signals emanating from the three-eyed atlas. At first glance, the frequencies seemed random, merely noise scattered across the spectrum. However, when they applied Fourier transformations to identify cyclic patterns, something emerged. In the noise, like a whisper beneath chaos, a structured repeating impulse was found, too precise to be natural. It was not a standard binary signal and did not resemble typical modulation used in human technologies, but it bore a clear mark of intentional encoding. Some speculated that it could be a beacon, a repeating signal meant for receivers not from this Earth. Others proposed the theory that this could be telemetry, a constant stream of data sent back to the place from where this object came. What was terrifying was that regardless of the message it transmitted, it had not changed since the network first detected it. It seemed that the three AI's atlas were not trying to talk to us, but to someone else, and perhaps that someone had already heard him. News of the discovery quickly spread to the highest levels of scientific and defense institutions. A confidential report that circulated within NASA and then leaked to an unnamed journalist revealed that top officials are already coordinating with global space agencies to determine if the three-eye atlas pose a threat. Some scientists claim that it was harmless, possibly an ancient probe, hundreds of years old, moving along a predetermined path through the stars. Others were less optimistic, raising questions no one could answer. If it transmits signals, then who receives them? If he has light emissions, does he also have an engine? If he is not here by chance, then why now? The report mentioned the distant possibility that three Atlas AI were not just passing by, but observing, tracking planetary alignments, electromagnetic fields, or even advanced civilizations. This possibility caused panic behind the scenes, because if this object is not alone, then something else may be approaching, something that sent it. Further studies of the brightness of 3II Atlas led to a revolutionary hypothesis. The object not only emits energy, it collects it. The way the light beam of the object fluctuated depending on its distance from the sun, combined with the absence of chemical reactions, supported the idea that it might use solar collectors or photon absorption systems embedded in its surface. Loeb and a group of theorists suggested that the clouds of dust surrounding the object could serve a dual purpose, as camouflage to hide its artificial structure and as a medium for absorbing solar radiation. If this is true, it could mean that the 3II Atlas is a self-sustaining apparatus designed for endless travel through deep space, recharging and moving from star to star. This concept aligns with well-known theoretical models of interstellar probes, machines that can remain dormant for centuries, activating only upon reaching a star system of interest, and if our solar system triggered this activation, then a message has been received. While international space agencies hurried to find answers, one truth became increasingly clear. We are not ready. Despite decades of speculation about contact with extraterrestrial civilizations, our systems, political, scientific, philosophical, are completely unprepared to handle what the object 3I Atlas might represent. No official statements were made, but leaks of internal documents from agencies in France, Japan, and Brazil hinted at similar conclusions. This object may not just be an anomaly, but the first slow contact. Unlike what Hollywood taught us, there was no landing, no sudden appearance in the sky, no immediate answers, only data, only light, only silence. The network continues to observe the object every day, and every answer it provides raises two more questions. If this is contact, it happens on their terms, quietly, from afar, anxiously. And this may be the most frightening of all, because what we are observing may not be an invitation, but surveillance, and we may have already been noticed. As soon as the astronomers thought that the 3 and Atlas had settled on a predictable trajectory, something unexpected happened. Its brightness suddenly increased. This was not a gradual increase due to proximity to the sun. It was a sudden burst, recorded in real time by the James Webb Telescope and confirmed by several ground observatories. The object's brightness increased by nearly 40% in less than 2 minutes, then stabilized at a new, elevated level. No natural explanation matched these data. There were no signs of interaction with the solar wind, no impact events, No fragmentary disintegration. It seemed as if someone or something had pressed a button. The burst was visible not only visually, it carried with him a change in the thermal signal of the object, as if the systems had been activated. Theorists proposed a frightening hypothesis that this object had entered an awakened phase, possibly due to its proximity to our star, or influenced by our own observations. And if this flash was an intentional act, it was meant to be noticed. Soon after the anomalous bright flash, orbital calculations from several space agencies detected another. 3 Atlas no longer followed their planned trajectory. He shifted slightly, imperceptibly but measurably. Gravity alone could not explain this change. Even the pressure of solar radiation, often cited as a reason for small deviations in the trajectories of light objects, did not match the facts. This shift was intentional, and even more alarming was the direction of the new trajectory, deeper into the solar system, with an altered inclination that brought it closer to the plane of Earth's orbit. The object was no longer just passing by. It had essentially changed lanes. Some scientists called for restraint, labeling it a gravitational anomaly, but others saw it as a maneuver, a subtle course correction that no comet or stone had ever made. And if the 3 Eyes Atlas is capable even of limited propulsion or navigation, it meant that we were no longer observing the relic. We became witnesses to a moving vessel, a vessel with intent. When the object came into the observation zone of the spectroscopic instruments of the Hubble and James Webb telescopes, scientists began to identify elements and compounds that raised increasing concern. Traces of highly reflective alloys, rare earth elements, and most shockingly, absorption spectral lines resembling compounds not previously recorded in our periodic table were discovered. These were not materials that could be found in a frozen piece of interstellar rock. They looked artificially created, or at least synthesized in conditions that cannot exist in nature. One of the spectra did not match any known chemical processes, but strikingly resembled theoretical compounds proposed in quantum materials laboratories, substances that were believed to exist only under the influence of strong magnetic fields or in conditions of quantum limitation. This discovery implied either an incomprehensibly ancient age of the object, suggesting it predates human civilization by thousands of years, or a highly advanced recent production by a civilization far superior to ours. The nature of the materials spoke louder than any signals, because even if we could not decipher the message, the messenger itself was unnatural. With growing evidence pointing to an unnatural origin, governments and agencies began to respond, discreetly but with clear urgency. Encryption levels at observatories were heightened. Research teams were quietly reassigned. In different corners of the world, a sharp and unexplained increase in satellite reconfigurations was recorded. Countries capable of space travel began to hold closed discussions about possible actions. A leak from an international defense consortium suggested that the object 3-eyed Atlas might not be the only guest, but a spy. The unusual structure of the object, its stable rotation, and clear ability to remain functional over interstellar distances indicated a design consistent with a long-term observational probe. But if it was indeed on a reconnaissance mission, what was it searching for? And, even more disturbingly, what might follow next? A terrifying consensus was forming in universities, observatories, and military command centers. We were no longer alone in the universe, and the first contact could turn out to be an assessment rather than a conversation. When speculations reached a critical point, a brave team from the SETI Institute decided to take a risk like no one else would. They transmitted a directed radio signal straight to the presumed location of the 3-eyed Atlas. The message contained universal mathematical constants, the periodic table, and basic visual representations of humanity. It was designed as a cosmic handshake, a cautious greeting. Days passed, then a week, but no response came. However, when the experiment was about to be archived as yet another unanswered call into the darkness, one of the monitoring stations in Chile detected something strange. A narrowband response signal, frequency shifted, but unmistakably matching the original message in timing. It was not an answer in language. It was not an echo. It was a signal, a returning response, which had enough variations to imply that it was not a simple reflection. It had been processed. It had been sent back. But what shocked the SETI team the most was the timing. The response arrived exactly 72 hours after transmission to the second. This meant that someone not only received our message, but also calculated the delay, responding intentionally. After detecting the return signal, observatories around the world began experiencing technical anomalies. Infrared web tools showed irregular thermal mapping for the first time since launch, while Hubble's gyroscopic sensors recorded microfluctuations despite stable orientation. Ground-based telescopes encountered what was initially attributed to software glitches: incorrect star maps, unexplained pixel distortions, and frozen data streams occurred when they were aimed at the three eyes. But these glitches were not random. They occurred in synchronized windows, as if someone or something didn't want us to look too closely. From a black operational center, deeply hidden in the European Space Agency, a theory emerged. The object not only emitted signals, it interfered with us, selectively intervening. The consequences were astounding. The passive visitor does not hide their identity. The scout does. If the subject actively controlled what we could see, and when we could see it, then we weren't just observing them. We were allowed to observe. And then silence fell. For several days after the incident with the signal and technical failures, updates from Webb were delayed, restricted, and then completely redirected. Public logs were no longer accessible. The European Space Agency issued a vague statement about recalibrating instruments. NASA simply stopped commenting. Even respected journals that closely followed the three eyes began retracting articles or publishing neutral summaries without details. The astrophysics community was divided. Some believed that agencies were working on verifying the discovery before making it public. Others thought something darker had happened. The truth had already been confirmed and was now being concealed. A few remaining independent observatories began publishing raw data for the public, but they quickly drowned in a flood of misinformation and speculation. What was once a global scientific mystery has now become a strategic asset.